Welcome, everyone, to Life Beyond 6 Feet. I'm Damien from RKB Paranormal, and this week I have a very special guest. I have Bobby J Gallo with me. Bobby, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Damien. It is awesome to be on the show. I am really excited to be here.
And like I said, I want to say you were the very first person when I put out a message about people wanting to appear on the show. I think you were the very first one that sent me a message interested in appearing on the show, so I appreciate that.
Oh, no problem. No, look, you know, I've done a lot of podcasts, and I honestly, and I mean this, I have actually said it in my second book, but I owe the success of my first book to all of the podcasts that I was on because it's really right today. It's one of the only ways to really reach this niche audience, these people that really love the paranormal.
Right. That and social media is pretty much your go-tos nowadays. So, all right, so I'm gonna just dive right in at like what age did you really get interested into the paranormal?
Well, as I said in my first book, and I'm going to be doing this a lot, like holding up my book.
You're perfectly fine. Perfectly fine.
But as I said in my first book, Family Spirits, I've always been a weird kid. I was weird when I was a kid. I'm not a kid anymore. I'm a
Right.
58-year-old kid now, basically. But I've been weird ever since I was a kid, and I loved monster movies. I loved, doing magic, professional magic, magic tricks, card tricks, things like that. And I've always believed in ghosts, to a greater or lesser degree. And when I, became an adult, in my early 20s, I got wind of a haunted theater in my town that was actually built by my great uncles. And people were saying that it was haunted.
Right.
So I went over there and I spoke to the owner, and he was terrified. He was having things thrown at him, poltergeist activity, everything. So me, up to that point, the only thing I knew about the paranormal were books by Hans Holzer
Right.
and a man named John Booth turned in paranormal investigator. So I'm kind of like patterned myself after him.
Uh-huh.
So me and my friends got together. One of my friends gave us a name, the side guys. He says, "Oh, we have to have a name." And we went out and we did our very first investigation. That was in 1989. And back then, paranormal investigator, the phrase wasn't even coined, and nobody knew what they were doing.
Right.
So we with a tape recorder, an old VHS camera, a candle, a key on a piece of string that we used as a pendulum, and maybe the old still 35 millimeter cameras,
Hmm.
and our first investigation. And we did get an activity. In fact, that very first investigation, very recently, there's a local magazine called Weird New Jersey, which is very iconic on the East Coast.
Hmm.
They did a 5-page spread on my first investigation last summer.
Oh
And,
wow.
yeah, so that was pretty cool. So anyway, to make a long story short, I've been doing it, as a paranormal investigator since 1989. So, well before the plumbers.
Right. And and so before that first investigation, did you have any personal experiences as a younger kid or as a teenager or anything that kind of got you more interested?
Um, I think I was like a lot of people. I thought I had experiences. My grandmother's house was supposed to be haunted. We thought we had experiences there. Not really sure. But like anybody else, most people that look at us as paranormal investigators wonder how we can do what we can do, because most people have phasmophobia, which is a psychological condition of fear of ghosts, basically. And
Hmm.
even I had it before I became an investigator. I was deathly afraid. I remember being in an old haunted building one time. I had to spend the night there when I was a professional magician, and I was terrified because I was told the building was haunted, and I felt it when I was there. That's really where I had my first experience. But as I became an investigator and I really started delving into this and having more and more experiences in communicating with these entities, I've completely lost my fear now. I can go pretty much anywhere now and investigate, and I actually look forward to it. I want that
Right.
activity because why else would we do what we're doing?
Exactly. And so you say you've lost that fear. Is there times you may get caught off guard, maybe just get a little spooked at times, like something will happen, you kind of jump and like, oh shit, what was that? Those kind of moments.
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. In fact, our most popular episode on our web series, and for your viewers, we have a really extensive web series that we've been doing now for over 10 years called Gallo Family Ghost Hunters, and it's on every major platform: YouTube, Daily Motion, Vimeo, Rumble, and all kinds of places. And when I was probably our most popular episode is called The Hidden Grave of Thomas Sprott. And as I was doing that, I was going into this small family burial plot that we had permission to investigate. And as I was going towards the cemetery gates, something physically stopped me. My EMF detector just went crazy. And this is all on video. People can actually watch this on the web series. And I couldn't enter the gate. And that was
Huh.
one of the few times I really got scared
Right.
because I could feel something physically keeping me out of that cemetery gate. So the answer is yes, absolutely. I think no matter how long you do this, sometimes these spirits throw you a loop and
Hmm.
something happens that really does catch you off guard and scares the hell out of you.
Right. And I think I'm that person on my team. I'm the one that normally gets spooked, and it's always something that probably shouldn't spook me, but like you said, it kind of catches you off guard. And 9 times out of 10, it's not even something paranormal. So, and everybody gets a good kick out of that. So,
But by the way, there's some work being done on my house. If everybody hears a vacuum cleaner on the microphone, that's what that is. Oh, just okay.
and so, when did you kind of decide to involve your family in doing this? Because I
Okay,
know
that's yeah.
because I know your wife does it with you, and I know your daughters have done it with you as well. So, when did that kind of come about?
Absolutely. Um, this is exactly how it happened. After the investigations that I told you about that were in the late 80s, I actually got out of paranormal investigation for the better part of a decade. I became a professional magician and I was touring, and then I got out of magic to go into the corporate world because I had a family and I didn't want to be away from them. So I entered the corporate world, and we ended up moving down to South Carolina. And my kids had no idea that I was ever a ghost hunter, and I had really no reason to tell them.
Right.
Well, one day we had just burned through the entire catalog of Dark Shadows, the episode, the melodrama from the 60s.
Uh-huh.
And my kids stumbled upon this at the time, this brand new TV show on the Travel Channel called Ghost Adventures.
Right.
And they were just fascinated. Zach Bagans, they had a crush on him, but they were really fascinated by these three random guys who would go out and hunt ghosts. And I was amazed too, because I'm looking at these guys and I'm saying this is not that much different than what I did in the 80s.
Right.
So one day we're all sitting on the couch and we're about 10 episodes in, and I turned to them and I said, "Hey kids, Daddy used to do that too." And all of a sudden the world stopped. And it was like, I don't know if you ever seen that movie Spy Kids. My kids used to like it, but there's a
Uh-huh.
moment in that movie where the stars go, "My parents aren't cool enough to be spies." I mean, they couldn't believe their dad actually did what they were watching these guys do on TV. So
Right.
then and there, immediately the kids wanted to go ghost hunting. And my wife thought about it, and she thought it was a good idea because she said, a lot of these places we would be investigating would be historical
Mm-hmm.
by nature. So the kids would actually be learning history as we're doing this, because we
Right.
would go to battlefields and all kinds of haunted locations, and even in cemeteries you could learn a lot. You'd be surprised
Oh
just
yeah.
by reading stones. So we started doing it on a hunch, and all I wanted to do at that point was get one picture, one EVP. How cool would that be if we could just get one thing that these guys were capturing on TV?
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me tell you something. As it turned out, we were getting more than these guys on TV, and that's no joke. People could see it when they watch our web series because we fake nothing.
Right.
And I found out that my kids and my wife all had psychic talents. My wife was a natural born dowser. I bought her a set of homemade dowsing rods, and she was picked them up like she was using them her entire life. My oldest was an empath, turned out to be, and my youngest could see orbs with her eyes.
Oh
And
wow.
she would say, "Daddy, there's one right there." And I would turn the camera over and I would take the picture, and there it is. And one time she says, "Daddy, there's an orb dancing on the stairs in the old haunted theater." So we went in there. I took video. I couldn't see it, but when I went back and looked at the video, there's the orb dancing on the stairs.
Oh wow.
I mean, it was amazing. It was like almost one of these things where I didn't choose this; it chose me.
Right. Well, that's pretty cool, and you kind of in a way have Zach and the crew to kind of thank for it,
I
because
do,
if they never would have stumbled across that show, you may not be sitting here right now talking to me. So
no question.
and and I think it's cool how you involve your family. My wife is on our team, and that's actually how we kind of met. That was one of our common interests was the paranormal, and our oldest he's real big into it. And he's actually went on a couple investigations with us. He just turned 15, so he's been on a couple,
Wow.
and he gets kind of spooked a little bit, but he's real intrigued. And so when I'm, going over evidence and I hear or see something, and he's still the one awake, I'm like, hey, come listen to this or come check this out. And he's like, man, that's really cool. So that's awesome that your family is involved. Do y'all still go out as a family and do it, or how's that working now?
Well, right now it's really hard to coordinate everybody's schedules because the kids are growing up now.
Right,
My one daughter's in law school, my other daughter's a cosmetologist, and she's moved out of the house at this point. But we do still do episodes. Like recently, my youngest daughter Courtney, we all got together to do a Gettysburg investigation with two other, a wife and a husband paranormal team, and caught some stunning evidence. And so we still do it when we can together. It's not as I mean, we used to crank them out. I mean, we have like 70 episodes at this point. We used to really crank them out. We don't do that so much anymore, but when we do it, it usually turns out to be a very high quality investigation.
right. So unlike the shows, you do your entire investigation in one night, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And it's funny too, because a lot of people say, oh, you have to have so much patience as a paranormal investigator. It takes so long to get good evidence. I don't know what it is, but I swear to you, we can go out for a couple hours and we'll get something. And usually it's something pretty good. Like at Gettysburg was the last one I was just talking about. We got a full body apparition. I mean, it was
oh
crazy.
wow.
And it wasn't even that hard to do. Um, but we just have a knack. And I think there's a reason for it. First of all, we don't do the antagonistic approach to ghost hunting. We don't antagonize the ghosts. We don't threaten them. We're really, really respectful and
Hmm.
nice. And I think that's a lot of reason why we get it is because they're granting it, because we're very grateful when we get a
Right,
piece of evidence. They don't have to give us this evidence. They have nothing to prove to us.
right.
And we don't know why they're there, but they are in a lot of cases. Sometimes it's residual, which is a
Hmm.
whole nother story. But we just seem to have a knack for getting the evidence. And again, this is all on video. People can watch our web series, and it's all in our books. I have two books. I have Family Spirits, and the other one that I wrote is Family Spirits 2. That
Right,
one just came out. And it's basically a compilation of all our investigations. The first book is 60 investigations. We give people behind the scenes on everything, and everything is 100% real. We fake nothing.
right. And see that's where we see our common similarity. Our team is the same way. We don't go in provoking. We treat them as if
That's
they're still
great.
living. We treat them as if they're still living. Um, when we go to jails, we do take a different style when we go to jails, because my co-founder, he's he works in corrections. He's worked in corrections nearly 20 years. So we he'll kind of use that jail lingo when he's in a jail. He doesn't go and cussing them or anything, but like he treats them like they're at work. Like, hey guys, it's time for lockup, this and that, and that's proven really useful for us. And we're kind of like you guys too. We've been doing this for a little over 2 years now as a team, and
Right.
we've had very few what you would call a dead night. We always seem to have really active nights, and I think, like you said, it's partially because
Yeah,
how respectful we are. We
I
don't go
bet.
on because we don't go in there cussing and doing and all this dumb shit. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, no, no. I'm agreeing with you 100%. And I think it's also like a lot of times I talk to paranormal skeptics
Hmm.
and, people that are, they're just flat out atheists, nihilists. They don't believe in anything. They believe
Right.
that we're just worm food when we die. And they're like, well, I've been on a ghost hunt and I never had any experience. And I said, it's because you're so closed and
Mm-hmm.
these ghosts have nothing to prove to you. They're not going to say, oh, look at me, I'm here. I mean, it's not how this works.
Right.
And you don't understand that. I said, you're not having an experience because you're not open to it. My own
Mm-hmm.
brother was like that until very recently. He went to a psychic medium and now he's a believer.
Right.
So it's, attitude is everything. Intention and attitude is everything. I don't care what anybody says. You don't even need equipment. You just need intention and attitude, and
Mm-hmm.
and you can get evidence. Of course, you
Oh
need
yeah.
something to record your evidence with, like an EVP recorder or a video camera or a camera. But you need, other than that, that's really all you need.
Right. And that's kind of how we are. We have a bunch of different tools, but our biggest thing is our digital recorder and our camcorder. If we didn't have you didn't have any of the other stuff, all the other stuff, it makes it more, I guess, fun for people. Um,
Right.
but yeah, the EVPs, man, we captured one here recently at an investigation. I actually captured on my video camera. Um, we're sitting there chatting and stuff, and I'm doing the Estes method, so I don't have any clue, what's being
Oh
said.
wow. Okay. Cool.
So I have no clue what they're saying behind me, and I'm just spitting out, what I'm picking up on. And you hear one of our teammates, Ted, he goes, "Are you Pop?" And then you hear my wife kind of whisper, "Who's Pop?" And then right after that, like right at the camera, you hear a voice come through that says, "That's not my name." And it was so clear. It blew me away, and I got the chills as soon as I heard it. I was like, "Man, that's awesome." So
Yeah, that's great. It's I've never done that. That sensory deprivation to get an
mhm,
EVP. And I respect people that do that because you're really opening yourself up when you do that. And like the conduit methods of communication, the dowsing rods, the pendulum, the Ouija board. It could be a little risky at times, but the
mhm,
rewards are great, when you get something like that.
right. And a lot of people don't buy into the Estes method for the simple fact that a lot of the times what you're saying isn't adding up with what's being asked. But then
Mhm.
you'll have, here and there, it'll line up, and you're like, how do you explain that?
Well, it's
You know?
because you explain it that it is what it is. I
Hmm.
people ask me, it's very funny. You're a paranormal investigator. You write 2 books. You have a web series. You have all mountains of evidence. People go, "Do you really believe in ghosts?" And I'm just like, dude, I've passed the point of belief a long time ago. I
Right.
mean, how many more times do I have to communicate with these things? I was just at the Whaley House 2 weeks ago, and in San Diego. I was
Hmm.
out there on a business trip, and I says, "Well, while I'm out here, I'm going to the Whaley House because I don't know when I'm ever going to get back to San Diego because I live in Pennsylvania. It's an
Right.
8-hour plane flight." And so I'm in the Whaley House, and we're doing a ghost box session. And I'll tell you, boy, that place lives up to its reputation. And I don't normally like doing these paranormal attractions
Right.
or the paranormal, attraction du jour, like the Queen Mary and the
Hmm.
Shanley Hotel. I like, but the Whaley House was there. And I says, okay, I got to go to the Whaley House. So anyway, I'm doing this thing, and this thing comes through, and he's like, his name was Pete. He says, "I am Pete." And then I say, "Why are you hanging around the piano?" And he goes, "I enjoy the company." I mean, full sentences.
Oh wow.
And then I asked, I said, "Do you enjoy people coming here?" And we got this maniacal laughter through the ghost box. And then I said, "Well, thanks for talking to me." And he goes, "You're welcome." And I mean, it was crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we just put that out actually on video because it was like, yeah, exactly. You go to the skeptic. Well, how do you explain that?
Uh-huh.
Who's talking to me if you don't
Right.
believe me? Come on.
Exactly. And yeah, we're not big fans of the public events like that either, because it's hard to go in there if you're taking it serious and actually try to actually do what you're there to do when you
Right.
have 20, 25, 30 other people that's just kind of there to say they've done something like that before. So
Yeah, and the thing was, one of the people involved with the Whaley House found out I was a paranormal investor. They're like, "Oh, we'll rent you the place. You can have it all to yourself. It was something like $450 an hour with a minimum of 2 hours." I'm like, "You want me to give you $1,000 so I could just be here alone for 2 hours?"
Oh my, see, that's a little that's a little much.
I think that's a little high.
It is.
So I'm like, no, I'll just do the self-guided tour and I'll sneak away into a corner and do my own thing.
Right. Yeah, I don't mind paying for an investigation, but it's got to be worth the price of admission. A
I don't
thousand.
know. Well, if any place in the world would be worth $1,000, it would be that place. But if I'm going to give you $1,000, I want all night long,
Exactly.
dusk till dawn,
Uh-huh.
not 2 hours.
Oh
I
no,
want to be
no.
able to sleep on the floor in a sleeping bag
Right.
and bring in my whole team. I said, then maybe
Right.
$1,000 is worth it, but that would be my stipulation.
No, 2 hours. Hell, I'm just getting warmed up in 2 hours.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
all right, so when did you sit down and decide to start putting everything to paper and write these books?
Another excellent question. Um, well, basically when we started the web series, and this is the truth, it was 2011. You could count the people on YouTube doing a paranormal web series on one hand,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew them all. And the television shows were popular, but nobody really at that point was thinking of actually going on YouTube and doing paranormal. So we kind of blazed the trail with that. Us and Gavin Kelly and Rachel Hoffman and some others, and we developed this following. It was kind of like an underground following because it was such a new medium at that point, and I'll never forget April Abercrombie, who on Facebook had one of the first paranormal forums called Ghost Advice. And she was like, "Oh, this is so cool. It's like having a fourth ghost show to watch because it was Ghost Adventures, Ghost Hunters, Paranormal State, and then people were watching us, in their free time." And that's how early we were doing this. And so we developed this following. So years later, and it was actually about 4 years ago now, maybe 5, I floated it out to our fan base. I said, if I wrote a book on the paranormal, would you read it? And the response was an overwhelming yes. So I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And, I know this is a little bit crude, but we said that anything goes on this show. It was like mental diarrhea. It just all came out.
Right.
Boom. I had this book right here. This book is almost 300 pages. If you can see the size of it, it's a very, very extensive book. I
Right.
had this in 3 months.
Oh wow.
And yeah, because I couldn't, once I sat down to the keyboard, I had to finish these thoughts and it was just all coming out and it was crazy. It was just so easy for me to write. Now, the second book, which is a little bit shorter, not much, but a little bit, this was actually much harder to write because I have interviews and this and everything. But the first one, it just wrote itself. It was like, it had to be written. And I'm really proud of it because it hit number 3 on Amazon in the adventure travel category.
Oh, that's cool.
Would it hit number 2 or number 1, but there were some Pulitzer Prize winning authors ahead of me that I couldn't pass them. They just had the thousands of people in their fan base. So they
Right.
were holding those positions. But I'm happy with number 3. And so it was really well received. We actually sold more copies in the UK than in the United States.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they really liked us out there.
That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. So so that's basically the story of how the book came about. But it's a cool book. The first half of the book is everything I know about the paranormal. And the second half of the book is a compilation of behind the scenes of our episodes, because a lot of people wanted to know, what was the car ride like on the way home from some of the more frightening investigations?
Right.
What were we feeling? What happened? They're only 20-minute episodes. So if the investigation was a couple hours, what was happening when the camera wasn't running? And that's all explained in the book. And it's cool because if you're a fan of the web series, you can see behind the scenes. But if on the flip side, if you read the book first, and you like what you're reading, you can actually go and see that investigation on the web series. So it's kind of cool how it works that way.
Right, right. I'm gonna have to check out the web series now. So
I want you to.
you've got me interested. So
Now I will forewarn you. Some episodes are better than others
oh
because we put it all out there.
right,
It's the full scope of things. You're not going to get this mind blowing, investigations on every episode. I will
right,
tell you, the Hidden Grave of Thomas Scott is a mind blower. It's a mind blower, period. And that is our best full body apparition where you can actually watch it forming on camera.
oh wow,
Yeah, it's so cool. And you could see it as my daughter was catching it in real time on her infrared camera, and she's elbowing me. She's like, Dad, you got to see what I'm getting. And I'm like, no, honey, we'll do evidence review later. She's like, no, you got to see this now. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to. Holy shit. I mean, it was crazy.
right,
I'm because you couldn't see it with the naked eye, but with the infrared and the infrared LCD screen, you could see it, how it
right,
was formed in front of my wife in an ectoplasm cloud. And finally, standing right beside me, fully formed as this human figure. And it's crazy, but you could see it on the episode. And some of the newer episodes, I mean, are really good too. Our newest one, Phantom Regiment, it's called, with the Gettysburg full body apparition, is another amazing episode. So definitely check it out.
oh yeah, and in capturing a full body apparition, that's like more or less the holy grail in this field.
It is.
You capture that, it's like what else is there to do? And I'm like, well, I capture that, I want to capture it again. You
Yeah,
know, we,
exactly. And you know what? It's funny. My wife says that all the time. She says, "We've done it, everything. What else is there to do?" I'm like, "Get another one." Like, you
right?
just,
Yeah,
I totally agree with you. Totally.
we
We've gotten three. One could be pareidolia, but I don't think so. The other two, there's no question.
right. See, we haven't captured that yet. Our biggest capture to date is we captured a picture frame being slapped off the wall, and
Nice.
in this video, and I'll send you the clip here when we get
I love it.
done. Um, it's just me and my co-founder. We're at an old jail, and like I said, he'd been using the jail lingo all night, and we're in the kitchen of this place, and we have the door closed, and our REM pod's going crazy, our EDI's going nuts, and we hear a woman from the hallway say help, like we both hear it.
Oh wow.
And so I'm like, well, I'm going to check that out. And I'll pick up my camera, walk over, and I'm like, hello. And right about that time, you see this picture frame gets knocked off the wall, does a flip in midair, and lands about 4.5 feet on the other side of the door.
Crazy.
And when you break this video down, um, we brightened it up and we slowed it down a little bit. You can see a shadow figure dart across the screen right after I say hello, and then when you see that picture go flying, it looks like a shadow arm comes out from behind the wall and actually slaps the picture.
Oh, that's cool.
And so,
Yeah, that's great evidence, dude. That's rare because I'll be honest with you, with all of the investigations we've done and all of the evidence we've collected, we very rarely get poltergeist activity. So when you get that, see now you're saying full body apparition is the holy grail. I think poltergeist activity like that is equally as good.
right,
I mean, you know how much energy it takes for a spirit to be able to do that?
exactly.
A
And
lot.
see, in that night, we'd been getting stuff all night long, but it seemed like every time something would happen is when we would get into a room right before we started filming, or we'd be changing spots and we wouldn't be filming anymore. So they were kind of toying with us all night. And so, like I said, Josh, my co-founder, he was kind of like, you've been doing all this stuff for us all night long, but we need you to prove to us you're really here. We want you to really show us something. And they put on a show for us. They right at the end of the night.
They
So
gave you exactly what you were looking for. And maybe it took them that long to gather enough energy. I mean, that's not out of the question. I mean, we know that they need energy to do any of this stuff. That's
absolutely,
why we get battery drain. That's why you and I will get paranormal hangover because if they don't have anything
yeah,
else, they're going to tap you.
oh yeah,
Yeah, I mean, all kinds of things. I mean, and that's why I tell a lot of people, it's amazing how many investigators don't even know that EM pumps exist.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, you need to get an EM pump. Well, what's that? I said, so that they don't drain your battery, basically, so that they drain,
Right.
you can't use your EMF detectors when the EM pump's going. I said, that's the only caveat.
Right.
Everything else. But yeah, we've gotten cool stuff. I mean, some of our EVPs like yours, we got an EVP like you. I mean, in my book, Family Spirits, gonna hold it up again, folks. Family Spirits, available on barnesandnoble.com. The I call it the greatest EVP ever caught, and I know it probably isn't, but it's up there for sure. Um, but entitling the chapter one of the greatest EVPs ever caught just doesn't do it for me. So anyway, but it was cool. You know why it was cool? Because my wife and I didn't mean to catch it. We caught it by accident.
Oh wow.
Um, we were leaving a cemetery that was probably one of the most haunted patches of land we have yet to ever investigate. It was Old Unity Cemetery in Fort Mill, South Carolina. And I left the recorder going on in my pocket. I forgot it was going on, forgot it was on. And my wife and I were tripping over headstones and footstones trying to get out because the sun had gone down.
Right.
And finally, I get home and I take the recorder out and I realize that I forgot to shut it off. So I download the file onto Audacity and I'm doing evidence review. And I'm like, oh, and I'm laughing at Renee and I tripping over things trying to get out of the cemetery.
Right.
And all of a sudden, out of the clear blue, a third voice comes in as clear as you and I are talking, but very wispy, very ethereal, and definitely female, says, "Don't leave," and then follows with, "Come back now."
Oh wow. That just
Just
gave me
like
the
that.
chills just thinking about it. That's crazy.
When you hear it, the goosebumps will be an inch high on your arm because of the way it sounds. And I put this on a couple. We played this on a couple shows, and one show was this guy Cyrus Kirkpatrick. He's written books on metaphysics, and he listened to it and he says, "You know the problem with this EVP?" I said, "What's that?" He goes, "It's too good." He says, "People are going to think it's fake."
Oh
He's
man.
it's so good. And we just played it on Our Haunted Lives on Paraflix, which is a show much like yours.
Right.
And they were just there. Dave Taylor said, "This is the EVP every paranormal investigator strives to get," and it was caught completely by accident.
Wow. And then you talking about our haunted lives. Dave and Christy was actually the very first people to interview us for a podcast back in January of last year.
Oh wow! Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's so awesome! I
So
absolutely love them. I love
yes,
them.
yeah. So before they were on Paraflix, when they were just doing the podcast, they had David had actually reached out to our team page and he was like, "Would you be interested in coming on?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, man!" I was like, "That's super cool." So he more or less they kind of put us on this path to doing podcasts because they were the very first ones to interview us, and then it eventually just led into I was like, "Man, I'd like to start my own podcast as well." And at some point, they're going to be guests on the show too. I just got to get everything lined up with them. So we
That's great. That's great. I
so
will.
they're
That's a show that I will definitely tune in to see.
yeah, they're two really great people. I really enjoy talking to them whenever I get to chat with them.
Yep, yep. I actually had the opportunity to have dinner with them. They were a little funny story about them. We were at the Warren Seekers of the Supernatural Paracon last year
Hmm.
in Waterbury, Connecticut, and they had the booth right next to us, and they
Nice,
didn't know who we were.
right?
And ask Christy because she tells this story to everybody. All of a sudden, when the thing started, and we were not expecting this, we had people lined up at our booth saying, "Oh my God, we love your web series. We know who you are. Could we have a picture with you?" And we sold out of every book we had, every T-shirt we had. And Christy and David are like, "Who the hell are these people?" They had no idea who my wife and I were.
Right.
And then we explained that we weren't expecting it either, but it turns out that a huge part of our following ended up coming, people that we never met ended up coming to this Paracon, and it was just like this unbelievable success. And immediately we hit it off with Dave and Christy. They had us on their live satellite broadcast that they were doing, and then we went out to dinner, and we've been friends ever since. And then we were on Our Haunted Lives
Right.
about a month later, and she even tells the story on that one, that she was like, it was just so funny because we weren't expecting it, and they didn't know who we were, and everybody was surprised about everything.
Right. That's super cool. Like I said, I love Dave and Christy. So I'm going to do a little speed round of something here. I've never done this before, but I know you've investigated a lot of places. So I'm just going to rattle off some places, and you just say if you've investigated them or not. So,
Yep.
all right,
So
let's go. Penhurst,
no,
no. Trans Allegheny,
no,
no. Uh-oh. Let's see. You mentioned it earlier. The Queen Mary,
nope,
no. Oh man, I'm 0 for 3. The Villisca Axe Murder House.
nope,
Oh man. Let's see. The Ohio State Reformatory.
nope,
No. Oh my goodness. Eastern State Penitentiary.
nope.
Man, I'm getting all of these are all ones I want to go to. So
I'm not saying I don't want to go. I'm just saying I've
all
never been.
right, so let's just jump in and just name some of the places you have been.
All right. Okay. Well, let's start with the famous places, since you named a lot of famous places.
Right.
Into the Castillo de San Marcos in St. Augustine, very famous haunted structure.
Eh,
There's a lot of other famous ones there, but that's the top one there.
right.
And then I would have to say the granddaddy of them all, Gettysburg Battlefield, several times, Antietam Battlefield as well. Um, Wow. I mean, and most of the other ones, I mean, I'm sure we've had some other famous ones, but most of them you've probably never heard of. And that's probably why we get so much activity. Oh,
Right.
Kings Mountain Battlefield, another battlefield.
Right.
Great activity there. In fact, the most prevalent phenomena there is the phantom horseman on that people hear galloping through.
Oh
And not only
nice.
hear it twice, we recorded it twice.
Oh nice.
Yeah, so we actually have the audio evidence. So I mean, it's without question, it is definitely there. Um, but yeah, I mean, most of the places that we have investigated, you've probably never heard of.
Right. And see that's another similarity we have. We'll investigate these more well-known places, but we kind of
Mhm.
prefer ones that aren't that well known.
Right.
You may have heard of them, but it's not like, oh, I've never really heard of that. And I think that's why we have so much luck as well, because we do a lot of places that like hasn't been investigated a ton
Yeah.
or over investigated. So um like
Salem in Salem, Massachusetts. That's a pretty famous one we've done.
oh yeah, like the place we captured that EVP. Yeah, it was a little um bed and breakfast up in Kentucky. I'd never heard of it,
Yep.
and I'd reached out to one of my actually she was on the show a couple weeks ago. Her name's Regina, and I was like, "Do you know of any places that aren't over investigated? Because we want to go somewhere. We would prefer somewhere that hasn't been investigated a million times." And she's like, "Well, check this place out." And she gave me the phone number to the owner, and we was up there about 2 weeks later, and it was probably one of our most active nights to date. So
Amazing. That's so cool. And those are the places. I mean, our best evidence has not come out of a famous place. Well, the one in Gettysburg is pretty good evidence, and that's pretty famous.
right.
But most of the time, it doesn't.
Right. And so like I said, we're kind of more drawn to like prisons and jails. It seems like you're more kind of drawn to battlefields.
Absolutely.
So what kind of draws you to the battlefields?
Two things. Two things. Number one, just like the prisons, there's a lot of dark energy there. I mean, let's face it; these people died brutally,
Oh yeah.
horribly. I mean, there was no easy way to die in a battle back then. You usually got shot, and it was a slow, painful death, or you died on the operating table,
Right.
and or from blood loss after having one of your limbs hacked off without anesthesia. I
Hmm.
mean, crazy, crazy stuff. But that being said, battlefields, and this might seem like a cop out, but they're easily accessible and they're free.
Right.
And you could just waltz right in and do
Hmm.
your investigation.
Right.
That's probably, I'm just going to tell people flat out, that's probably one of the main reasons we do it, because it's just so easy to do.
Right.
and the evidence is off the charts all the time. We did Antietam years ago, and we caught an EVP while we were going through Bloody Lane Trail, and the EVP was the name of a person, Paul Lee, and we didn't know who this person was. And I failed on my post investigation research to find anybody named Paul Lee. And I thought, in family spirits, I said it's going to remain a mystery. Well, guess what happened? Somebody was doing a Google search on Antietam that was part of they were a Civil War historian, and they came across our video on Antietam called Footsteps of Antietam.
Mm-hmm.
And they watched the video and they contacted me and they said, "Did you ever find out who Paul Lee was?" I said, "No." He says, "Well, I know who he is."
Oh.
He goes, "Paul Lee was the field surgeon at Antietam."
Oh wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That is.
So whatever spirit was looking for him was looking for the field surgeon.
Oh wow. That's pretty wild right there. We
And I write about that follow up in Family Spirits too. I says, "Wow, that's a great topic for the second book." Because we
right.
just validation from the first book.
Absolutely. And but we haven't done a battlefield yet. There's quite a few like well-known ones here in Tennessee that we do want to do.
Oh,
Um,
do
um, the one I think we all want to go to the most is where the Battle of Shiloh happened at.
oh, nice. Okay.
And we've all been during the day and stuff. But I remember I'd went by myself one year. Just I was on vacation. I was like, you know what? It was actually in 2020, probably about 2 months before we actually formed our team. So COVID was going crazy, so there wasn't really much to go out and do. So I was like, you know what? I'm on vacation. I don't want to sit at home, so I'm going to hit up all these spots around me that I've been wanting to go. And so, Shallow Battlefield was one of them. And so I'm driving through, the park and stuff, and stopping at all these different sites and reading all this different stuff, and just kind of taking it all in. And I remember I'd stopped at one, monument. There's a big statue of like a family or something. I'm reading about them and stuff, and I'm the only person around. I hadn't seen a car for like 30 minutes, and I hear this loud like crash in the woods behind me. And I was like, that's weird. My first thought was that a tree had to have fallen or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so I look over and there's an opening over there, and they actually had like a plaque that told about something that happened right there, like somebody was camped out there or something. And I'm looking around, and just from where I can see, I don't see where like a tree had fallen.
Right.
And I was like, it doesn't make much sense. And then it kind of just popped in my head. I'm like, what if I just heard the residual sound of a cannonball? And so I was like, that it kind of gave me the chills when I thought about that. So, a battlefield is definitely a place that we're gonna eventually have to hit up. Because like you said, free. And if the park rangers come in and say something, all they're gonna do is ask
They're
you
not
to
going to
leave.
say anything.
And if they do, they're just gonna ask you to leave. So
Yeah. Well, they're only going to ask you to leave if you're there after sundown.
right.
So, in our experience, and yours may differ because obviously there's no experts in this field and everybody has different experiences. But dusk is our most active time. And it's not night, dead of night. It's just before the sun goes down as the sun is setting, twilight. That seems to be the most active part of the day for us almost always.
Huh.
So, and if you do it around that time, they're not going to ask you to leave. They're only going to get on your case if you do it after the sun goes down, and they have strict rules about being on the battlefield
Right.
after dark. So, in Gettysburg, we were there way after dark, and I kept telling the team, I'm like, if the park ranger comes, we're getting a fine. Like, I'm
Right.
telling you right now, they don't. But we were at Spangler Spring, which is across the highway from the main part of the park.
Hmm.
So, but it was only a matter of time before we were going to get caught. And I'm like, we got to go, we got to go. But that's when
Right.
we caught the body apparition
Oh wow.
through the ghost box, by the way. And we were using the Echovox Touch by my good friend Danny Roberg. On the Echovox, it was telling us, get off the battlefield.
Oh man.
And then it followed up by saying, do you understand? Get off the battlefield. Get off the battlefield. It was telling us, like, get off, leave. You got to go. It was
Wow.
crazy. And then
That
evidence review. My wife caught it again, infrared camera, right behind a boulder. You could see the full body apparition of what looked like a Union soldier, because you could tell the Union uniform. He had the short cape and he looked like a Union cap on. It's as clear as could be.
Oh wow.
Just checking us out, just watching us with his hands on his hips, just checking us out as we're investigating. I mean, it
Right.
was
That's pretty insane. So you're making it more and more interesting, piquing my interest more and more to check out your web series.
oh yeah, definitely check out the Battlefield ones. Like the Antietam one is great because we call it Footsteps of Antietam because we were at the old Dunker Church, and that's where they had literally limbs piled up like firewood outside the door. There's like old pictures of that, which is I don't recommend. But anyway, we're sitting in there and we're doing an investigation in the church. We were the only ones in there, and all of a sudden we hear these footsteps clop 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 right across the floor.
Wow.
We have it on video, so you can listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at my daughter and I said, "Did you do that?" She's like, "Nope." "Did you do that?" "Nope." And my wife's behind the camera. She goes, "No, they didn't move." I mean, it was crazy just to hear those footsteps go across the floor, and it's on the video, so you can like hear it
Wow.
yourself.
And seeing that reminds me of an investigation we had earlier this year. We we actually were asked to come out to a community center here, and we did that, and they have an old cabin on the property, and they're like, we have some
Right.
weird stuff happening here, and so we're over in the cabin. It was just me and my wife and another teammate at the time, and I'm standing in the middle of the floor, and I'm doing the Estes method, and they're sitting on a bed, and I can feel the floor vibrating like somebody's walking around. And I go and I stop. I'm like, who's walking around? They're like, we're not moving. And I'm like, I was like, I feel you walking around. And they're like, no. And I feel it a second time. And the second time, um, you actually hear my wife say something, and then you hear what sounds like a guy, like he's huffing, like he's aggravated or something. Then you hear the footsteps going across the floor, and you can see the camera vibrating.
Wow, 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 wow.
Just,
Yes,
just
something was definitely there. Wow, that's very cool.
it was
That's
pretty
very
neat,
cool.
and that's on our YouTube as well because I thought that was a really neat capture because we just had the camera sitting stationary on an old dresser, and that was pretty cool. So you've been to all these different places, and it sounds like you've had a blast doing it. So what
Sure.
what would probably be your favorite place you investigated to date?
Wow. Man, that is a tough one. I don't even know if I can answer that. It gives me a headache just thinking about it. Um, our favorite place to investigate would probably be, believe it or not, I'm going to go back to that theater that my great uncles built, not just because it was my first investigation, but
Hmm.
we did a follow up investigation with the entire family 20 years later.
Oh wow!
And it never disappoints. It's haunted by two ghosts named Malcolm and Jenny. And every time we go there, it's just an evidence fest. It
Wow!
just doesn't, it just, it's, in fact, that 20-year follow up investigation, I had to put out 3 episodes. I had to chop the investigation up into 3 episodes. It was just too much to put into one.
Oh wow!
It was just one thing after another, after another. I mean, just crazy things. And my friend, like Lance Phillip, who was on that investigation, he is a staunch paranormal skeptic. You have people like me. I'm a very intuitive, spiritual kind of investigator. I believe a lot of stuff,
Hmm.
but he believes in nothing unless it could be scientifically verified. You have a
Right.
lot of investigators like that. The real staunch, scientifically minded paranormal investigator. He says, "I don't believe in orbs. Orbs are just dust. Orbs are just pollen." I'm like, "Okay, I believe that those can make orbs, but I'm telling you, paranormal orbs exist." Well,
Hmm.
we're in this investigation. He goes, "Bob," he goes, "I hate to say this, but I think I just saw an orb." And I said, "Where?" He says, "Right over there by the men's room." But I just happened to have my camera right in my hand, my still camera. I swing it over, click, and there it is, exactly where he saw it, about that big, the size of a marble, glowing with a halo around it. And now he's a believer. He says,
Oh,
"If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I never would have believed it. And you caught it on camera to
right.
validate."
Oh yeah.
So, but anyway, I got off tangent. I would have to say it's the theater.
And where's that located?
Netcong, New Jersey.
Okay. Okay.
If you see Back to the Palace, 1, 2, and 3 on the web series. And by the way, for your viewing audience, and if I can mention this again, we have one website, one URL. We have a link tree, and our web series is on there, as well as where they can buy the books if they are so inclined to read our books.
Hmm.
It's ghosthunter.ws,
All
not
right.
.com. It's .ws, stands for web series. So ghosthunter.ws. And if you go there, there's a big link tree, and it has our web series on each of the platforms. I don't care where you go. You can go to any of them. It's all the same stuff.
Right.
And the 2 places where they can buy our books, and some other things where they can find us on Twitter, on YouTube, on Tumblr. We are now on a small little television station called BB3 TV. So there's a link there where they can watch the stuff. So a lot of places. Ghosthunter.ws. It's our entire paranormal world through that one URL.
All right. All right. So again, you did all these different places. What's the one place you haven't done that you really want to?
Bucket list.
Yep.
It's not in this country.
That's perfectly fine.
Edinburgh Castle, Scotland.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's no place I would rather investigate than Edinburgh Castle in Scotland. That would be number one. And by the way, I'm actually going for my PhD in parapsychology. And the only place in the world that has an accredited degree in parapsychology is the University of Edinburgh, Scotland.
Oh,
So
wow.
yes, you got to take a long distance thing.
Right.
But yes, that would be number one. Number two would be Raynham Hall. And if anybody ever, that's in England, and that's where the very first ghost was ever photographed, the Brown Lady of Raymond Hall, where you can see her coming down the stairs,
Mm-hmm.
the most famous paranormal picture in all of paranormal land. And I would like to go there and investigate there to see if we could recreate that picture. But from what I understand, the current family, very wealthy family who owns it, won't let anybody try.
Oh,
They say it's old puppycock.
right. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
yeah. And so a lot of your bucket list places is overseas where they've been around a whole lot longer than we have over here in the U.S.
Yes.
And then there was a whole lot more tragedy over there before the U.S. even existed. So that place, yeah, I've seen that.
There for your viewing audience. There's the picture of the Brown Lady of Rain. I put that in Family Spirits because that picture is probably one of the pictures that really got me as a child hooked on ghosts.
Right.
And to this day, it has never been debunked. Some people say, "Oh, that's been debunked." It's never been debunked.
Mm.
So, yeah, there you go.
Right. So I'm gonna throw another one out there at you. What's probably I know you said you don't really get scared that much anymore, but what's been like during all your investigations, what's been the one thing that probably scared the hell out of you the most?
Well, it wasn't just me, it was the whole family. Other than that episode where I couldn't enter that cemetery gate, we did an investigation in a cemetery, and it was quite clear the spirit or spirits did not want us there. And it was funny because, can I point to one thing that happened there that really freaked us out? No, it was a bunch of little things. First of all 4 of us felt an oppressive feeling like we have never felt before. Like it was oppressive, like something was just sapping our energy and making us depressed and really making us want to leave. That was number one. But number two was my wife was communicating through the rods, and something clearly wanted us to leave, and then was draining all of our equipment. Not one piece, but everything was gone. The only thing that was left standing at the end of the day was my cell phone, which we started doing the video with because our video cameras died, our EMF detectors died, everything died. It was sucking energy out of everything. And my oldest daughter, who was an empath, really was getting before everything died, she was getting a ghost box communication, and it was telling her about her friend who just committed suicide.
Mm.
And it was nasty. And after we had left, we call it the gatekeeper, because gatekeeper was one of the EVPs we got. And then when we took a picture of the gate, we got a huge orb standing next to the gate, or floating next to the gate, if you will. But I had done post um, investigation research on that cemetery. I did not know this before I went, but apparently, according to old newspaper articles, people were doing voodoo rituals there.
Oh,
Santeria. Headless chickens were found in the cemetery, and all this really crazy stuff. Um, and apparently, whatever guardian spirit was there was trying to make sure that that wasn't going to happen again. Because put yourself in the shoes of a spirit. If this family comes in, wants to talk to the dead, and has all this equipment, how do you know it's not the same type of person who just desecrated the cemetery like a couple months earlier?
mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I would say if there's any place I wouldn't go back to, it's that cemetery. I would not go back there.
And see, that was fixing to be another question of is there a place you would never go back to? So you just answered that one.
Yeah, for sure.
Uh,
I'm not going back to that cemetery. However, we did have a negative experience in Old Unity Cemetery, and it was our first experience there. And we went back there many times later and got some great evidence. But um, I didn't know of any voodoo rituals happening there, so it's a little different situation.
right, right. And that's that stuff you really don't want to mess around with because you don't know
Yeah.
what they could be conjuring up and what you're dealing with. So,
Well, the biggest thing I worry about are, attachments and things following you home, because we had a problem with one of those, and it was bad. And it was one of the ones where you actually have to call in clergy to get rid of it because it wasn't going away on its own. And we actually stopped investigating for a couple of years after that happened, because it was pretty traumatic. And that was what happens sometimes if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, saying the wrong things and doing the wrong things.
mm-hmm,
So as a result, not only do both of my books, Family Spirits and Family Spirits 2, come with ample warnings of what could happen, I also have my rules. I
mm-hmm,
have definite rules for paranormal investigation. And one we already went over, and that's don't antagonize.
right,
Another rule is do not take anything home from an investigation other than your evidence.
mm-hmm,
Don't take that cool looking rock you just found on the tombstone, or don't take anything, because anything could carry an attachment. Another thing is set firm ground rules. When you're done, you say, I'm staying, I'm
mm-hmm,
going, you're staying. Um, this is all psychic phenomenon. A lot of it is intention. Keep your intentions positive. Another thing is don't ghost hunt at home. Keep your home your sacred space. A lot of these people doing Ouija boards at home. Well, and listen, you're inviting them into your house. If they don't leave, that's on you. So, I like to sleep.
right,
You know, I'm not ghost hunting at home. I ghost hunt out there when I'm home. That's my sacred space. This
right,
little says seance room, please respectful of, that's just a joke.
right,
I don't really mean that. I don't do
right,
seances here. So yeah, and I have other rules as well, but
right.
those are some of the main ones.
And see what we and see we live by a lot of those same rules too. And that's another reason we don't go in provoking and trying to piss them off because you don't know what could attach itself to you and come home with you. Even though we have stuff that goes on in our house, and we have broke that rule of investigating our own home, but nothing feels bad here. It's just more or less letting us
Mhm.
know they're around,
Right.
and and it's typically just some knocking here, some footsteps there. It has moved stuff a couple of times, but it is what it is, as they like to say. But we haven't ever got any um, answers as to who it is. I do think we interacted with my aunt here one night because my aunt passed away a couple years ago, and I'm like 99% sure I sat here and had a full blown conversation with her one night.
Wow.
Um,
I believe it. Well, there you go. So it's nothing. It's benevolent. It's a family member. Hey, look, I still think my deceased parents are around. If things happen, but that's nothing to worry about.
right,
I'm talking
and
about negative attachments.
yeah, and because whenever we actually started my team, she had already found out she was sick and she wasn't going to be alive much longer. And she joked that when she passed away, she goes, I'm going to haunt you guys. That way your team gets famous, and
Ah,
and so occasionally we'll get a real strong whiff of cigarette smoke, and none of us here smoke, and she was a real heavy smoker, even up until even up until she couldn't really get out of bed anymore. And so this one night, me and my wife both smelt it really strong. I was like, man, I really smell that. And we had heard something in her bedroom. So I was like, let's just put out the REM pod EMF detector just to see what happens. And my wife started just naming through people that we both knew that had passed away. And it says, if you're this person, light one of these up. And when it got to my aunt, it lit up. I was like, all right, well, I was like, I'm about to find out for sure. So I started doing like multiple choice questions. I said, I'm going to ask you a question and I'm going to give you three answers. And whenever it gets to this answer, light this device up for me. And I think I asked about 12 questions and 11 of those questions lit up on the correct answer. And I was like, it's got to be her.
That's awesome.
So, so what's the future look like for you and your family? You guys gonna? I know you said your daughters are in college and stuff. So are you and your wife gonna kind of continue doing this, or are you gonna kind of take a break from all of it? What's the future look like for the Gallo family?
Oh, well, I still try to get the whenever the kids are available, I try to get them out on an investigation. And people go, Dad, what do you want for your birthdays? I don't want to go out on an investigation and then dinner. You know, I'll bribe you. I'll bribe you if I can't get you out there any other
Right.
way. Because I want to get them on camera. But the thing is, as I say in the back of Family Spirits 2, which is the book that just came out, um, right now, our main focus, Renee and I, are to do as many things like podcasts, like we're
Hmm.
doing right now, and going to Paracons and meeting our the people that have supported us over the years and validating our evidence and speaking and getting on panels. I just did a panel a couple of weeks ago. It was really a lot of fun. Um, because after you've done so many investigations, now it's time to share it all. I
Hmm.
mean, yeah, it's one thing to share it with the people watching your videos, but to really get into in-depth conversations like we're doing now is,
Hmm.
is another matter entirely. So I think that's where the focus is right now.
That's awesome. We're actually doing our first paranormal convention in a couple of weeks, and a little nervous about it because they want us to get up and speak, and I don't mind talking one on one with people when I'm in front of a crowd. I kind of stove up a little bit, so I'm gonna have to get past that. But I wish
Yeah,
I wish I wish I would got a hold of you earlier. I could have invited you down to this podcast. I don't know how far not this podcast, this convention. I don't know how far you're willing to travel to make appearances, but it's the very first one that they're doing, and it's actually going to benefit two great causes.
that's great.
Half the benefits is being donated to a senior dog center, and then the other half is being donated to a historical haunted location to kind of help restore it and keep its doors open and stuff. So,
Yeah, we just did the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash,
mhm.
and we did it for wounded warriors. And
Nice.
we I think we raised $18,000.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, for wounded warriors. So yeah, I mean, like, yeah, go ahead, people. Knock the paranormal. Look what we're doing. Look what
Right,
we're doing.
right, and that's something else a lot of people don't understand is we do this for fun and for all this and for learning and all this other stuff, but there's also usually a big reason behind a lot of it, like attending these conventions that's donating the money to a really great cause. And so we're not selfish like a lot of people kind of portray. Well, you're just doing this for yourself. You're doing it to get clicks and likes, and
Well,
the people that do this for the right reasons could care less about all that.
yep. And I'll tell you something right now for people that, and I've had the fingers pointed at me that way.
Hmm.
And I said, first of all, we were demonetized on YouTube a very long time ago, and we don't make anything on YouTube. And Vimeo, we have to pay for. Not only do we not make any money, Rumble doesn't generate anything. Daily Motion does. Daily Motion demonetized all paranormal and UFO content because they were deemed sensitive subjects. So we don't make any money on Daily Motion. The only thing that subsidizes our investigations are my books.
Hmm.
So, if anybody, and how much do we make on a book? A couple bucks.
Right. Right.
It's like pocket change, really. So we don't do it for the money.
Mm-mm.
I mean, I work a corporate job. That's what I do. So does my
Right.
wife. So,
Hmm.
um, we do this because it's our passion.
Mm-hmm.
I want to prove life after death,
Right.
and we're slowly doing that, because you can't tell me after, for us, it's been over a decade. Every single piece of evidence we have ever captured, you can't tell me is groupthink, mass hypnosis, dust, pollen, electromagnetic hallucination. I mean, all these things that people use to explain away the paranormal. You
Mm-hmm.
can't tell me every single piece of evidence we've ever captured is that. I just, no, I
Nope,
don't accept that.
there's no way. And like you said, you're trying to prove, we're all trying to prove that there is, like the name of this podcast, life after 6 feet.
Absolutely.
So, there is an afterlife, whether people want to believe it or not. And when you get, like you said, a ton of evidence over X amount of years, how can you just disprove that
You
and
can't.
just say, oh, this is that, or those people get on my nerves, man.
They they keep my nerves are so frazzled from the atheists, the skeptics, the nihilists, the materialists, yeah, and whatever you want to call them. They are, because they're not skeptics. Skeptics should be open-minded. These people just don't believe, and they don't want to
Right,
believe. Any
right,
number of reasons they don't want to
right.
believe, no matter what they're presented with. Um, yeah, there is an afterlife. I mean, look at me. I had a near-death experience. I had I've seen my father come back during my near-death experience. I've one of my most profound paranormal experiences wasn't even an investigation. It was with a psychic medium who told me something from 5 states away. She couldn't nobody knew except me. My dad, communicating something he had to tell me,
Mm-hmm.
which I write about in Family Spirits too, which I'm not going to talk about it now. It would take too long, but it brings people to tears when I tell them.
Oh wow.
But I know there's an afterlife because there's no other way. There's no
Right,
other explanation for any of this.
right.
So, yeah,
And it's always fun when you can flip a skeptic or a non-believer.
it happens.
It does. Cause see, my mom she was on the skeptical side, and this was before we ever started our team. She went with me to Waverly Hills, and it was, of course, one of the public events, but you're kind of spread out, so it's not as clustered. And what she's experienced there and seen there when she walked out of that building, she was 100% believer. And I told you this stuff was real. So,
And you know what I find very interesting about that too, about places like Waverly Hills. See, now my view on some things does change over time. Like I would think logically that places like Waverly Hills and those really famous haunts would lose their energy over time. Like they've just been sapped out by all of these investigators, like
hmm
hundreds and hundreds of investigators. But that's just not the case with some places.
hmm
Like the Whaley House was proof positive for me that even after dozens of they do an investigation almost every night.
right,
It's $100 a person to come on our investigation, but yet those things are still there. It's
right.
crazy.
And see, that's how it was with me because I've been to Waverly Hills 3 times and I experienced stuff the entire night, and it was different stuff from the time I was there before. So like
Yeah,
it wasn't like it was like residual. Like I was experiencing different things all 3 times I went. So
right.
so I don't lost my train of thought, and that happens at times on this show. Um, yeah, I lost my train of thought. I was going somewhere with that, and I completely went fucking blank.
Happens to me all the time.
Anyway, I think I've about covered everything that's popped in my head, man.
That's awesome.
I've really enjoyed this interview,
This was great.
and I think you've got a new viewer. As soon as I log off here, I'm gonna go subscribe to your channel.
Yes. Ghosthunter.ws.
Hmm.
And that'll bring you to it. If you want, if you like doing YouTube or on YouTube, that's fine. That's
Right.
cool. Subscribe. Vimeo, Daily Motion, Rumble. I think that's all of them. Um, anyway, but it's all on ghosthunter.ws. And for your viewers, anybody watching this podcast, if you want to check out my books, this is a Barnes and Noble exclusive. This is both on Barnes and Noble and Amazon. But if you go to ghosthunter.ws, it takes you where you need to go to buy the books. We also have a merch page on there too, but I'm not going to get into that. That's just fun.
Right. Well, I really enjoyed this interview. It was really informative, and it was a lot of fun learning about your time as an investigator and bringing your family and stuff into it. That's really awesome.
Thank you, and I'll tell you, it was great being here too. I just love doing these things and meeting new people. And because you said you're going to be a new subscriber, well, I'm going to be watching your podcast now because never fails for me. Every time I appear on a show, I start watching all the other episodes.
All right. Well, like I said, we do have a YouTube channel, and it's on. I've got it right now. I think I've got it on about 15 different streaming platforms. Yeah, we've got a YouTube channel as well. So, alrighty. Cool. Well, again, I appreciate you coming on, and everybody. This is Bobby J Gallo. Go give their website a look, check them out, and I'm sure you're going to be impressed because I know I will be when I go check them out here in a few minutes.
Thank you, sir. Ghosthunter.ws. Thank you very much.
All right, everybody, have a good one.